I still remember that day as if it was burned into my bones. The sunlight was soft, slipping through the lace curtains of my living room, and the world outside looked peaceful, but inside me, something was breaking. My daughter, my little Emily, the same girl whose tiny fingers once wrapped around mine, stood in front of me holding her newborn baby. Her eyes were cold, sharper than I'd ever seen them. And then she said the words that tore my soul apart, "Don't touch my baby, Dad. You are disgusting." For a second, I thought I misheard her. My heart stopped, and the world around me blurred. I smiled weakly, thinking she was joking. I said, "Sweetheart, what did you just say?" But she just looked away, her jaw tight, her arms tightening around that tiny infant as if I were some kind of monster. "You heard me," she said. "I don't want you near my son. You're filthy." I had spent my whole life working, sacrificing, providing for her. Every breath I took since her mother passed away was for that girl. When my wife died, Emily was only 14. I cooked for her, washed her clothes, worked overtime at the factory just to pay for her school trips, her prom dress, her college. Every dream she chased, I was behind it, silently cheering, quietly breaking my back to make it real. And that day, she looked at me like I was something she'd stepped on. I wanted to ask why. Why would she say such a thing? What made her hate me so much? But my throat was dry, and I could barely breathe. She stood there with her husband, Mark, tall, smug, arms crossed like he owned the air we breathed. He didn't even look at me. Just smirked, as if watching me crumble gave him pleasure. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about me being disgusting. This was about control. About pride. About the poison that man had poured into her ears for years. When they left, I just sat in my chair. My hands trembled. The sound of that door closing felt like a gunshot. I stared at the empty space where she'd stood, where once she used to dance barefoot as a little girl. And I wept. For hours, I wept like a child. You know, sometimes life doesn't destroy you all at once. It chips away, slowly, piece by piece. That day, I felt the final piece fall. Tell me something, folks, what would you do if your own child looked you in the eye and said you were disgusting? Would you still forgive them, or would you finally say enough? Days turned into weeks. I kept hoping she'd call. That maybe she'd realize what she said, that she'd apologize. But she didn't. The phone stayed silent. The house stayed empty. The only sound was the creak of my old wooden chair and the clock ticking on the wall, the same one her mother had bought before she died. One evening, I decided to visit her house. I brought a small knitted blanket. I'd spent nights making it for the baby. It was blue with tiny white stars, just like the one I made for Emily when she was born. When she opened the door, she looked shocked. "Dad, you shouldn't have come," she said. Her voice wasn't angry this time, just cold, like ice. I smiled, holding out the blanket. "It's for my grandson," I said softly. "You don't have to let me in. I just wanted him to have this." Before she could reply, Mark appeared behind her. "Didn't we tell you to stay away?" he said. "You're not welcome here. Don't make me call the cops." "Cops?" He said it like I was a criminal. I just nodded, smiled weakly again, and turned away. My feet were heavy, but my heart was heavier. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to make things worse. That night, I went home, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the photo of Emily in her wedding dress. The same smile that once melted my heart now haunted me. I realized something. Love is a beautiful thing, but when it's one-sided, it becomes a wound that never heals. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him, remove Emily's name from my will. Everything goes to charity now, children who actually need love. He paused, asked if I was sure. I was. My daughter had already buried me in her heart long before I made that decision. Still, every night, I sat by the window, hoping maybe, just maybe, she'd remember who I was. That I wasn't disgusting. That I was just her father, who loved her more than life itself. But life had more to show me, a truth I never expected. One that would shake everything I thought I knew about my daughter and myself. It had been 3 months since I last saw Emily. 3 long, hollow months filled with silence and unanswered messages. I stopped calling. I stopped writing. But not because I stopped caring, because I couldn't keep breaking my own heart every time she ignored me. You can only bleed so much before you learn to stop the cut yourself. Life slowed down after that. I'd wake up, make my coffee, stare out the window, and watch the world move on without me. Sometimes I'd see the neighbors' kids playing in the yard, their laughter echoing through the still air. It reminded me of Emily when she was small, the way she'd run barefoot through the grass, hair flying, calling, "Daddy, look. I can fly." I'd smile, remembering those tiny feet jumping into my arms. One afternoon, I was out in the garden when my neighbor, Mrs. Turner, walked up to the fence. She was a kind old woman, always polite, always watching too closely for her own good. She had her phone in her hand, her face pale. "George," she said quietly, "there's something I think you should see." I frowned. "What's this about?" She hesitated. "It's Emily. I didn't want to show you, but I think you deserve to know." She handed me her phone. I didn't want to look, but my curiosity got the best of me. The screen played a short video, shaky footage, like someone had recorded it secretly. It was Emily. My Emily. She was standing in a cafe with Mark, talking to another woman I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding as I turned up the volume. The woman asked, "So, your dad still tries to see the baby?" Emily laughed. Laughed. "That old man? Please. I told him not to touch my son. He disgusts me." Mark smirked, sipping his coffee. "Yeah, well, he deserves it after what he did. People should know the truth." The woman leaned in, whispering, "What truth?" Emily looked around and lowered her voice. "That man cheated on my mom. He had an affair while she was sick in bed. That's why she died heartbroken. He's not the hero everyone thinks he is." My world went silent. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. I replayed it, again and again, hoping I'd heard wrong. But every time, those words cut deeper. He had an affair. He broke her heart. I could barely stand. I gave the phone back to Mrs. Turner, my hands shaking. "Where did you get this?" I asked. She sighed. "Someone from town posted it online. Said your daughter told them. I thought you should know before more people saw it." I thanked her and went inside. My knees gave out before I reached the chair. I sat on the floor, staring at the wall. My wife, God rest her soul, had died of cancer, and I'd never once left her side. I slept in hospital chairs, fed her soup when she was too weak to hold a spoon, whispered love in her ear when she couldn't speak anymore. And now, my own daughter thought I betrayed her mother. But how? Who told her that? That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked louder than usual. I stared at my wife's photo on the shelf, her gentle eyes, that soft smile that used to make everything right. Did I fail her? I whispered. Did I fail Emily? The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to find out where this lie came from. I went through old letters, photo albums, everything from those years when my wife was sick. There was nothing, no signs of infidelity, no hidden messages. Only love, pain, and memories. Then, while searching an old box in the attic, I found something strange, a stack of letters tied with a red ribbon. The handwriting wasn't mine. The postmarks were from the time my wife was in the hospital. I opened one. It was a letter from her best friend, Carol. Dear Lily, I know George loves you, but I still think you deserve the truth. He's been seen at the diner with another woman. Maybe he just needs comfort, but you should know. My heart dropped. I remembered Carol, always around, always pretending to care. That snake. I'd gone to the diner every week back then, but not to meet another woman. I went to pick up meals for my wife, because the hospital food made her sick. The waitress, her name was Marcy, was the one who used to pack the soup and write kind notes like, "Get well soon, Mrs. Miller." Carol must have seen that, and twisted it. I sat there for hours, my fists clenched. So this was it. This was the poison that killed my daughter's love for me. A lie, buried for decades, reborn through gossip. I decided to confront Emily. She needed to hear the truth from my mouth, even if she refused to believe it. When I reached her house that afternoon, my heart raced like it did when I was a young man. She opened the door, holding her baby. "Dad? Why are you here again?" "I saw a video," I said. "You said I cheated on your mother." Her eyes widened. "So what if I did?" "It's true, isn't it?" "No," I said firmly. "I never betrayed your mother. I loved her until her last breath." "You were lied to." She laughed bitterly. "You expect me to believe that?" "Mom cried every night. You were never home." "I wasn't home because I was working double shifts to pay for her treatment. Everything I did was for her, for you." My voice broke. "Emily, why would you believe such a thing?" She hesitated, her lips trembling. For a second, I saw doubt in her eyes. Then Mark appeared behind her. "Don't fall for his act again, Emily. The man's a liar." Her face hardened again. "Please leave, Dad." I stepped back, my eyes wet. "One day, the truth will find you, Emily. And when it does, you'll know what real heartbreak feels like." As I walked away, I didn't know the truth would come much sooner than I thought, and it would destroy the very person who spread that lie in the first place. The night after Emily slammed the door in my face, I sat in the dark staring at the photo of my wife. Her smile was faint, but her eyes still spoke to me, calm, forgiving, gentle. I whispered to her, "They think I betrayed you. Our daughter, she thinks I'm a monster." The wind outside brushed against the window like a sigh. For a long time, I just sat there, and then something inside me broke. Not the kind of break that comes from sadness, but the kind that comes from being done. I wasn't going to beg anymore. But I was going to find the truth. The next morning, I drove to the old neighborhood, to the small diner where I used to pick up meals all those years ago. It looked the same, the faded red sign, the smell of coffee and bacon in the air. Inside, there was a woman wiping the counter, her gray hair tied back. When she saw me, she smiled in surprise. "George Miller, is that you?" It was Marcy, the same waitress who used to help me during those long hospital days. "Marcy," I said, my voice trembling, I need your help. Do you remember when my wife was sick, you used to pack soup for her? She nodded immediately. Of course I do. You came here every day, rain or shine. You barely ate yourself, always saying you had to hurry back to Lily. I swallowed hard. Do you remember anyone who might have seen us together and misunderstood? Marcy frowned. You mean Carol? She used to come in sometimes, watching you from the window. Once she even asked me if you two were having an affair. I laughed it off, but she didn't seem convinced. My jaw clenched. So it was her. Carol, my wife's best friend. The woman who had been around during Lily's last months, whispering, comforting, pretending to care. She must have told my wife that lie, and when Lily passed, she probably told Emily too. I thanked Marcy and drove straight to Carol's old address. I wasn't even sure she still lived there, but when the door opened, there she was. Old, but her eyes were still the same, sharp, calculating, pretending to be sweet. Well, George, she said with a sly smile. It's been ages. What brings you here? I didn't waste time. You told my daughter I cheated on Lily? Why? Her smile faded, and she looked away. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice shaking but strong. I found your letters, Carol. You poisoned my wife's heart with gossip, and now you've poisoned my daughter's too. Why would you do that? She stared at me, her lips curling slightly. Because she should have been mine. I froze. What? She laughed softly. Lily took everything from me. You. The life I wanted. You were supposed to love me, George, not her. My stomach turned. You loved me. She nodded slowly. I waited years for you to realize it. When you didn't, I made sure she knew what kind of man you really were. I thought maybe she'd leave you. Maybe you'd finally see me. I felt sick. You destroyed my family because of jealousy? She shrugged. Call it what you want. But it's too late to fix anything now. Your daughter hates you, and your wife's gone. What more do you want from me? I stepped closer, my eyes burning with tears. I want you to tell the truth, Carol. To Emily. You owe her that much. She scoffed. Why would I do that? She wouldn't believe me now anyway. Besides, she barely visits me anymore. I'm not her friend, I'm just her mother-in-law's neighbor. I stopped cold. Wait, her mother-in-law? Carol blinked, realizing her slip. It hit me like lightning. You mean Mark's mother? She looked away. Now it made sense. Carol and Mark's mother were friends, that's how Emily met Mark years ago. The lie hadn't just been old gossip, it had been revived. Carol must have told Mark's mother about it, and she must have fed it to Mark, who, in turn, fed it to Emily. I turned to leave, but Carol grabbed my arm. George, don't tell her I said anything. I looked her dead in the eyes. You already told her enough to ruin everything I ever loved. When I left that house, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Mark's place of work, a construction site outside town. He was there, barking orders like a king in his tiny castle. When he saw me, he sneered. You lost, old man? I walked up to him slowly, looked him straight in the eye, and said, You've been feeding my daughter lies. You and your mother. Why? He laughed. Oh, she finally told you, huh? It's simple, Emily's too good for you. I wasn't going to let her waste her life feeling sorry for a drunk who cheated on his wife. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking. I never cheated on my wife. I never touched another woman in my life. He smirked. Then prove it. I stepped back, my voice low and steady. I don't need to prove anything to a coward. But one day, Emily will see who you really are. As I turned away, he shouted, "Good luck with that, old man. Nobody believes a liar." I drove home trembling, my mind spinning. That night, I sat alone, staring at my wife's picture again. "I promise, Lily," I whispered. "They'll know the truth. I'll make sure of it, even if it's the last thing I ever do." But I didn't know fate was already moving faster than I could. Because within a week, Mark would make one mistake, one cruel, careless mistake, that would expose everything in front of Emily's eyes, and destroy him completely. A week passed after I confronted Mark, and my house had never felt so empty. I'd stopped cooking dinner for 2 decades, but that week, I didn't even bother making breakfast. I just sat there, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring, hoping Emily would call. But it never did. Then one rainy evening, I got a call I didn't expect. It wasn't Emily. It was Mrs. Turner again, my neighbor, the same woman who had shown me that awful video. Her voice trembled through the phone. "George," she said, "I think you should come to the cafe downtown. Right now. You need to see this for yourself." I almost said no. My body was tired, my heart heavier than ever. But something in her tone told me this wasn't gossip. This was something real. So I grabbed my coat, stepped out into the rain, and drove. When I arrived, Mrs. Turner was sitting at a corner table, her eyes wide. Across the cafe, Mark sat with a woman who wasn't my daughter. He was laughing, loud, confident, touching her hand like he owned the world. The same man who had turned Emily against me, who had called me a liar, now sat there betraying her in the most obvious way. Mrs. Turner whispered, "They've been meeting every week. Everyone in town knows except Emily." I took a deep breath. My hands were trembling. "Record this," I said quietly. "Please. For my daughter." She nodded and took out her phone, capturing every second, Mark's smile, the woman leaning in, the kiss he thought no one saw. When it was done, I couldn't even stand. My knees felt weak. I looked at Mrs. Turner. "Do me one favor," I said. "Don't post it. Don't share it. Just send it to me. I'll handle it." When I got home, I sat in front of my old laptop and stared at the screen. I didn't want revenge, not in the cruel sense. I just wanted Emily to see the truth. The real truth. I transferred the video, added nothing. No captions. No explanations. Just the raw truth. Then I wrote a message. "You once told me not to touch your baby because I disgusted you. I never wanted to disgust you, Emily. I only ever wanted to love you. Please watch this, and then tell me who's really disgusting." I hesitated before sending it. My finger hovered over the mouse. A part of me was terrified. What if she still didn't believe me? What if she thought I'd faked it? But deep down, I knew truth doesn't need decoration. It only needs to be seen. I sent the message. Hours passed. The rain outside turned into thunder, then silence. Midnight came and went. Still no reply. I told myself I didn't care, but my chest felt like it was being crushed. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop. Messages, calls, everything lighting up the screen. One was from Emily. Her text was short. "Dad, I'm coming over." My heart nearly stopped. I hadn't seen those words in months. When she arrived, she looked different, pale, exhausted, eyes swollen from crying. She walked in without a word, holding her phone tightly. I stood there, frozen. "Emily," I whispered. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my little girl again, not the stranger she'd become. Tears welled in her eyes as she said, "Dad. I saw the video. I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. Mark, he's been cheating on me for months." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said softly, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You didn't deserve that." She shook her head. "No, Dad, you didn't deserve what I did to you." She started sobbing, her whole body trembling. "I was so cruel. I believed everything he told me. He said you cheated on Mom. That you were the reason she died. I was angry, hurt. I didn't even think. I'm so sorry." I walked toward her slowly and put my hand on her shoulder. For the first time since she'd pushed me away, she didn't pull back. She just cried harder. "I was wrong, Dad. I was so wrong." I wanted to say I forgave her right then, but part of me was still broken. You can forgive someone, but the pieces they break inside you don't always fit back the same. Still, I held her. "I know, baby. I know you didn't mean it." We sat together for hours, not saying much. She told me everything, how Mark had slowly turned her against me, how he used the story Carol told to control her. How he made her feel like I was unworthy of being near her child. Every word burned like acid. Then she said something that cut me deeply. "He even told me you erased me from your will because you wanted revenge." I sighed. "I erased you from my will because I thought you'd already erased me from your life." She cried harder, whispering, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Emily. It's about love. But love doesn't mean forgetting." We sat in silence again, just listening to the rain tapping softly on the window. Then she looked at me and said, "What do I do now?" I thought for a long moment before answering. "You tell the truth. You don't hide it, and you don't let that man control your story anymore. You look your son in the eyes one day and tell him his grandfather wasn't the monster they said he was. That's how you make things right." She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Before she left, she turned to me and whispered, "Dad, I love you. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that." When the door closed behind her, I sat back down in my chair, the same one I'd spent months crying in, and for the first time in years, I smiled. But little did I know, this wasn't the end. Because the moment Emily confronted Mark about the video, something far darker would surface. A secret Mark had been hiding that no one saw coming. And it would change everything, one last time. When Emily left that night, I sat in silence for a long time. I could still feel her hug, the way her tears had soaked into my shirt. After months of pain and loneliness, that small warmth felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. For the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, things could heal. But fate wasn't done with us yet. 3 days later, Emily called again. Her voice was quiet, shaken. "Dad, I need you," she said. "Please, come over." My heart raced. I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my coat and drove as fast as my old hands could steer. When I got there, she was standing outside, holding her baby close. Her face was pale, her eyes red, not from sadness this time, but fear. "What happened?" I asked. She hesitated, looking around nervously before whispering, "Mark's gone crazy. He found out I saw the video. He's been yelling all morning, saying I ruined his life. I clenched my fists. Where is he now? In the house. Packing. He said he's leaving for good. I looked toward the front door. Part of me wanted to storm in, but Emily grabbed my arm. Dad, please don't. Just stay with me. So I did. We stood in the yard, the baby crying softly in her arms, the rain starting to fall again, like the heavens were watching everything unfold. After a few minutes, Mark came out dragging a suitcase, his hair messy, his face twisted with anger. When he saw me, he froze. Well, he muttered, the old man shows up again. Perfect. I took a deep breath. You've done enough damage, Mark. Leave my daughter in peace. He laughed bitterly. Peace? You think you can fix what's broken? She destroyed everything. My job's gone, my reputation's gone, everyone's seen that damn video. You did that to yourself, I said calmly. You cheated, you lied, and you tried to turn her against her own father. Karma came for you, not me. He stepped closer, eyes wild. You think you won? You think you're the hero here? No, I said softly. I'm just a father who finally told the truth. For a second, I thought he might hit me. But instead, he just stared, breathing hard, then turned and walked to his car. Before he got in, he looked back at Emily. You'll regret this. Both of you. Then he was gone. Emily broke down crying, the kind of cry that comes from months of fear and shame finally being released. I held her close, whispering, it's over now. He can't hurt you anymore. But that wasn't entirely true. Because the next day, Mark's mother, the woman who had helped spread Carol's lies, came storming to Emily's house. She was furious, screaming that Emily had ruined her son's life, that I was a manipulative old man who destroyed everything. I didn't argue. I just looked at her calmly and said, your son destroyed his own life. And maybe it's time you stop protecting him and start asking why. She didn't have a reply. She just left, and I knew that family would never bother Emily again. The days after that were quiet. Peaceful, even. Emily came by often, sometimes with the baby. She'd sit across from me while I told old stories about her mother, how she used to laugh so loud the neighbors would complain, how she loved spring mornings and hated cold coffee. Emily listened with tears in her eyes every time. One afternoon, she handed me a folded paper. What's this? I asked. She smiled faintly. It's the lawyer's contact. I want to make sure your will includes me again. Not for the money, but because I want you to know I'll never erase you again. I smiled, tears burning my eyes. Emily, you don't need a piece of paper for that. You already came back home. That's all I ever wanted. She leaned forward and hugged me, a long, warm hug that said everything words never could. Weeks passed, and slowly, life began to feel whole again. The baby started recognizing my face, reaching for me whenever Emily visited. The first time he called me a grandpa, my heart nearly stopped. It was like hearing music after years of silence. But one evening, as I sat alone by the window, I found myself thinking about Carol, the woman who started it all. I'd heard she was sick, lying in a hospital bed, no family visiting her. For days, I debated what to do. Part of me wanted to let her rot with her guilt. But another part, the one my wife always nurtured, whispered, forgive. So, I went. When I walked into her hospital room, she looked small, weak, fragile, nothing like the cruel woman I remembered. When she saw me, she gasped. George, why are you here? I said softly, to say goodbye. And to tell you, I forgive you. She turned away, tears rolling down her cheeks. You shouldn't. I ruined everything. I nodded. Yes, you did. But forgiveness isn't for you. It's for me. I don't want to carry hate anymore. She closed her eyes, whispering, Lily was lucky to have you. I left without another word. That night, I sat in my chair again, the same one where I'd cried, where I'd cursed, where I'd once sworn never to forgive. I looked around the quiet room, at the framed pictures of my wife, my daughter, and my grandson. For the first time, I felt peace. And when I looked into the camera of my old laptop to record this story, the one you're listening to now, I smiled faintly and said, You know, life's funny. Sometimes the people you love the most will be the ones who hurt you deepest. But if you carry hate forever, you lose twice, once when they break you, and again when you can't let go. Don't let that happen to you. Forgive when it's hardest. Not for them, but for yourself. I paused, wiped a tear, and added quietly. My daughter once said I was disgusting. Now, every time she visits, she calls me Dad again. And that one word, it's worth more than any will, any money, any pride. Then I smiled at the camera and whispered, Thank you for listening to my story.